13 different teams from 11 different countries competing in the final event of DARPA's Subterranean Challenge here at the Louisville Mega Cavern. We have virtual and systems competitions happening simultaneously, and welcome inside our broadcast position. We are inside the Louisville Mega Cavern. I'm Cameron Irwin, your host, alongside Julia. This is Dr. Julia Badger, our technical commentator and program manager, Dr. Timothy Chung. Welcome in. It's going to be a great day. We've got a lot to get covered in DARPA's Subterranean Challenge, and if you're just joining us on this day of coverage, my goodness, the mission of the Subterranean Challenge is to build autonomous systems that can rapidly map, navigate, and search through underground environments like tunnel, cave, and urban. Now, we've covered a lot of stuff in the last few days, but it's coming down to today. We've got one final world left on the virtual competition and the prize round, yes, in the systems competition. So it's time to get into this a little bit. I know, Tim, this has been your baby. This is years in the making. I mean, we finally made it to the last day.
We made it.
How excited are you to get to this point?
I am beyond excited. This is just so phenomenal. It's been so rewarding to see all of our teams come together to tackle the challenges of these underground environments that DARPA's created for them. It's been so rewarding to see the team's camaraderie, their commitment, their dedication to bring these technologies to the front.
And Julia, for you, I know it's been so exciting for you to get to see kind of the journey of this in just a short period of time in the advancement of technology. What are some of the things you've seen the last few days?
Well, I'm just overwhelmed at how much everything has been pushed forward from a technology standpoint. And for Tim, actually, I think that it would be really nice to understand, where do these technologies go from here?
Yeah, that's one of the most exciting pieces about a DARPA challenge like this, is that there's no limit to where these technologies might end up going. We're going to see whole new sectors, I think, be able to sprout because of the technologies that we've developed here, whether that be through startup companies or supporting our warfighters and first responders directly through some of the insights that have been gleaned from their efforts here. I'm just overjoyed with the types of contributions we'll be able to make and have that dramatic impact.
So one of the unique parts of the Virtual and Systems as we go through these competitions today is the course that has been designed here. It is the triathlon of courses. It's tunnel, urban, cave, all combined into one. And this is true for both the Virtual and the Systems course design, which is going to bring me on over to two of the people that have worked relentlessly through this course design. It is our virtual competition lead, Angela Mayo, along with Victor Orikov, who is our systems competition lead. They're going to take you through the course and how it works. Over to you, Victor.
All right. So yeah, because the three subdomains don't really exist in any one location, we had the privilege of building a grand course that includes both all of the three subdomains: urban, tunnel, and cave systems. And so this is a fly-through video that shows you just the scale and scope of what was built here at the Louisville Mega Caverns. Now that we've seen what it looks like from the outside, let's take a look on the inside. Here we have the overall map of the course, and you can see that there's an urban section in orange, blue section is the tunnel subdomain, and then green is the cave. And this is the starting gate. As teams arrive, they don't know what the course looks like. All they know is that one entrance. And so they start there. Other than the starting gate, it's a completely unknown environment that they have to enter. So again, urban on left, tunnel in the middle, and cave on the right. So let's take a look inside. As we fly through, we'll try to highlight some of the challenge elements and unique features of each of the three subdomains.
And as we fly through, we'll realize that this is also the virtual World 8 that virtual teams are going through. So we're kind of merging the systems and virtual competitions here to send teams through both the same course.
All right, so let's start off with the tunnel subdomain. And so tunnel really is characterized by fairly unique, fairly consistent cross sections, but a lot of terrain obstacles. So we had everything from rails and mud to water. We had fog in the back and muddy sections. This shows you the rails that present a lot of challenges to the robots. Another element of the tunnel subdomain is just the scale and scope of it. So a lot of mines and man-made environments like this just go for kilometers and kilometers.
Once we get into the urban subdomain, you see again those rails that legged robots and wheeled robots have to go over, stairs and vertical areas that UAVs can explore, and lots of urban themed obstacles that teams will have to go through.
Here we're passing by a mezzanine level, so a lot of urban environments are just highly complex. There's side rooms to explore, but also mezzanine levels at different heights where maybe a ground robot can't explore, and so a team of both ground and air robots might need to work together, including areas like this warehouse section where there's a lot to explore down on the floor level, but there's also shelves really high up and also a mezzanine level where there might be artifacts hidden. Now we're back to the rail section. This really presented a lot of difficult challenges to robots, just like the tunnel section rail. The urban rails are have always been a challenge, but those are much larger and wider than the tunnel sections.
Once we get into cave, we get into very constrained passages, and then here you see where actually the raw Louisville Mega Cavern scan was used, and the raw course is what teams get to explore in this area. And
that really is just a consistent theme in this course. There's a lot of constrained passages. There's also a lot of big open areas. So we saw the warehouse, we saw that large cavern. There's several other cavernous areas. And this is really difficult for robots, which are often developed to specialize in a certain environment. And having sensors that can do that can handle both constrained passages and large open areas and explore the different exploration algorithms that are required is a really unique element of this course. Here we're circling back around to the starting gate. So that was a quick fly-through tour of the course. Over to you, Cam.
Great job, Victor and Angela. Now I've got a couple questions for you guys because you spent so much time designing this court along with Tim, and even Tim sitting here while that was going through, and Julia saying, wow, that was a really tough course. A little bit evil, but you know, these systems, they're having to deal with these things in reality, right?
Absolutely.
So what were some of the inspirations for you guys to be able to build this course? I know that you guys went out and even surveyed certain areas to be able to make it as realistic as possible. Victor?
Yeah, because we had the opportunity to build a course here at the Louisville Mega Caverns and we wanted all three subdomains, we really spent a lot of time going around and getting inspiration from some of the courses that we used in the circuit stage of the competition. So gold mines, coal mines, the nuclear power plant we were at for urban, and we also, like you said, went around to several different caves across different geological features to actually scan them and use them as inspiration for this course. And the goal for that is really to have a representative environment that captures all of the challenges of the real world out there. And so we were able to capture all those and build a course that brings all of those challenge elements together in one really complex and really grand scale competition course.
And now you mentioned the challenges, right? And I'm going to send it to Angela with this. I mean, how do you know what challenges to include and maybe not include? Because it changes per subdomain. How do you make the choice?
Right. There have been challenge elements that teams had to deal with at each of the circuit stages, and we really tried to bring them all together in this. So in tunnel, you saw the rails. In urban, you saw stairwells and mezzanine levels. And in cave, obviously, the constrained passages that systems teams didn't get to deal with in the physical realm due to cave circuit, but we ended up mashing them all up together and also being able to use parts of the raw Louisville Mega Cavern as parts of the course, which is amazing.
That's absolutely amazing, and we're going to send it back towards this direction because, Tim, I mean, one of the competition objectives is to have this circle, right, from virtual to reality back to virtual, and you're really seeing this as a merging point when we look at the course design, and especially it's World 8 for the virtual competition.
It sure is. This convergence of virtual and reality really helps us understand both the limits but also the capabilities of the technologies that we're developing. By merging simulation and the physical, we get some insights that will help us understand where there's still room to grow, but also the things that we can maybe potentially have an impact immediately. And I think that's the true contribution of the Sub-T Challenge.
So we've seen the advancement of technology, but we've also seen the impact immediately. So I want to first thank you, Angela and Victor, for joining us and walking us through. You guys did a phenomenal job. Thanks, guys. And I'm going to send you on off, and we're going to head back on into the virtual. Let's take a look at exactly how does this competition work. This is the DARPA Subterranean Challenge.
Here's how to win an event in the DARPA Subterranean Challenge. Find the most artifacts in the shortest amount of time. When, or if, a team's system locates an artifact, it has to report not only the type of artifact, but also its spatially referenced location to an accuracy within 5 meters. A valid report earns 1 point, but teams are granted only a limited number of reports, so they can't just guess until they get lucky. Sound easy enough? Think again. Teams have to send their systems through dynamic terrain, over, under, and around obstacles, in austere navigation conditions, pushing the limits of their endurance, and in conditions degrading sensing capabilities and severely constraining communications. So teams need to be agile, adaptive, and accurate if they want to emerge victorious in the Sub-T Challenge.
So these teams are looking for artifacts throughout the course, and it's important to note the difference. Our teams have been going through the preliminary round, but it's time to head into the prize round, at least for the systems competition. We've been walking you through the last several days through the prize round on the virtual side as well. So those preliminary artifacts are up top. You combine those in with the prize round. So there are 10 total artifact classifications out on course, and you can start to scan through and see why these might be useful or relative to a real-life disaster scenario. You can see the survivor, rope, vent, backpack, fire extinguisher, and I love the final cube. This is the big one here at the final event of DARPA's Subterranean Challenge. It's kind of the Easter egg you have to find. Here's more on the cube artifact.
The cube artifact will serve as the 10th and final artifact, and has been specifically introduced for the Subterranean Challenge final event. The cube is a 3D representation of the Sub-T Challenge official logo, inspired by the Platonic solid for the Earth, which is a cube, and captures the distinctly three-dimensional nature of the underground environments critical to the Sub-T Challenge. The cube artifact is 3D printed using a translucent plastic material and will be illuminated from within by RGB LEDs that rotate through the color spectrum, and will include a Bluetooth radio that emits a wireless signal. Teams may attempt to localize and find this item through visual cameras, detecting the shape through LiDAR, or by detecting the wireless signal.
And now it's time to head into our virtual competition. These are your field of teams. We have so many, and there's actually 4 crossover teams between the virtual and the systems competition from Coordinator Robotics, Columbia, Dynamo, Robotica, Marvel, CTU Cross Norlab. We got Team Barks as well, Flying Fitches, and Sodium 24 Robotics. 9 total teams on the virtual competition. And here is where we stand, heading in to the final world, world number 8. It is called the Sub-T Lair. We'll get into seeing all of those worlds as we go through, and you can start to see World 1, World 2, World 3, and what's important is each of the solutions these teams submitted, they are run 3 different times on each of the worlds, and every single point matters from each of those runs, which ends up with their total world score, and then heads on over to the right side of your screen for their total score up into, we head into world number 8. So you can see Dynamo up at the top. CTU Cross Norlab has done very, very well. And I love to see Marble. Man, the team out of Colorado, they've been tough too. You're gonna see them in the systems competition as well. So I mentioned we've got 8 different worlds. Let's take a look at some of those worlds. As actually, instead, we're gonna head right on in. This is gonna be our first highlight. We're looking back now. This is the last world. This is Sub-T Lair. This is Team Dynamo going through with a UAV. What do we know about them, Julia?
Well, we've talked a lot about Team Dynamo's layered approach to control. They have separated their architecture and put it into, the high-level goal, following goal-based frontier development, and then they have a local planner that says, okay, I see this space ahead of me, how do I get through it? And then their model predictive controller at the very bottom of that. And we see here that it's doing pretty well. I mean, there's a lot of tight constrained spaces. It's going pretty slow through this very kind of the rubble, you know, it's getting close to the walls here and there. It's trying to really feel its way out.
Yeah, so it definitely has to feel its way out. I mean, so many decision points for this team.
Absolutely, and I think that a lot of this kind of comes to the model predictive controller. And so we'll try to show you something here. You see it kind of getting close, but right here we're going to look and see how it crashes right into the wall and it dies a terrible death. But anyway, it was a very, very good try for Dynamo.
For Team Dynamo, definitely some difficulty as those UAVs, they've got to be able to get over those rails, fly around and explore all sorts of different environments in this world number 8, as here is now Team Columbia. Let's see what they have in store for us here on Subterranean.
Columbia also came out with its drones going directly in there. Because the space is so constrained, and you're going to hear us talk about that through this whole first 10 minutes, at least.
For sure.
it's actually maybe not the best strategy to send out your drone first. Obviously, they don't get to pick because this is, like Cam said, the same controllers that are going into each one of these worlds. And they pretty quickly find that it is a little bit difficult to get those drones to go. So we're just watching it essentially explore here.
And I think it's also important to note, we've talked about it throughout our coverage, but on the virtual competition, one of the huge points of emphasis is its true autonomy. You submit the solution and you are completely hands-off. You're almost a little bit helpless thinking, all right, here you go, child, sending you off to school. You got to be able to do what you need to.
Absolutely. And so it's going into the urban environment, and we've been looking at this for the last couple days in the systems competition. It's trying to decide kind of where it's at. This is a little bit less constrained of a pathway, and so it's doing a bit of exploration. It does have some corners to go through here, but one thing that is to note that once you get into these hallways with these really smooth walls and it's kind of just all the way down, you don't have anything until we hit that, I think that vent there down a little bit. It makes it a lot harder for the LiDAR and the localization to really go.
Yeah, some major challenges. Not only are they constrained passageways, but without having any real ID points, right, along that wall can also be very challenging for the sensors on board for so many of these systems as we head on into Flying Fishes. And this is just within the first 10 minutes. We're taking you through this. This is fantastic. So we're going to go through chronological order, at least somewhat relatively, as we head through this world number 8, Flying Fishes UGV. Taken off, and I gotta love this. I think that might even be that same hallway from a different view.
It is. It's just looking at the robot, but it's rolling through the same way as we saw. It's finding a bunch of artifacts. We saw the vent. It just looked and found something else as it kind of rolls into our subway station part more.
And you can also see the total number of attempts pop up, like you mentioned. Their score is on the left side of your screen, so that hopefully will be ticking up further and further as that 60-minute window continues to decline. You also have that map, that orange arrow, that's this current UGV.
Absolutely. So as it continues to go, if you remember from earlier, there's some stairs coming up here, and so it's been dropping some nodes, some breadcrumbs for communications, getting through those poles, which is great. But rovers, even with big wheels, are typically not the best on stairs. They just are not the ones to use. So let's see if it knows what to do once we get up to it.
Yeah, some of those stairs, just one of the many challenges. You also have the elements of light and darkness, maybe some mud and water. You have dynamic obstacles. That means something could potentially happen to change the course, and these systems aren't able to get back from where they came from, or maybe a new system can't necessarily traverse. As this UGV, yeah, those stairs are directly in front of it. So actually it's almost as if you are the stairs when looking at your screen. That yellow is just beneath, and this is another really emphasis on detail from DARPA's exploration into this world. They even add in the things that you would see in maybe that subway station. The yellow, a huge indicator of a hazard. So a lot of these sensors, they're able to pick that up as well.
And I love here that they had a mural done on the walls, and they have everybody's names in there. And so if you're a team, you know, look for your name, it's there.
Yeah,
it's pretty
you can
cool.
see coordinated robotics right there on the right side. Team Barks popping up as well. CTU Krasnolab, it passes through. I mean, every inch of this course, whether it is in reality or in virtual, I mean, it is to a T. Perfectly done. So much detail and so much thought put into this. As we head on into CTU Krasnolab, one of the other important pieces to note is 7 active robots already on the course, and we're only 4 minutes into their run.
Yep, we are passing by some of our friends here, and we're getting into the tunnel section. We did pass by a drill there at the start. We're going to see it kind of go back and forth, so I wanted to see if I could kind of show you some stuff that was going on. Kind of right behind here, I just missed it, is a, oh, I can't draw, never mind. We will keep going.
We were hoping to give you a little bit of
We were hoping to show you, but you'll have to just kind of look for yourself. But there's a sign, and right underneath it is a fire extinguisher, and it's going back and forth around that. I'm not quite sure if that's what it's doing, is trying to localize that, but that was the best conclusion I had on watching this video. So just if you're getting dizzy, which I did, it is trying to get that other that score in there.
So all sorts of different methods by which these systems are trying to get through this. We talk about planners all the time. What are the objectives of each of these systems as it passes the survivor? We'll maybe dig into that as we head to our next clip from Team Barks. There again is that survivor artifact, and this UAV, yeah, stuck between a rock and a hard place, or more so just on a rock. Let's head on over to Team Barks. Again, just within that first 5-minute window as they get their UAV off the ground and in. And we talk about exploration. I mean, what are some of the ways in which these teams kind of plan out and strategize that method?
For exploration, so one of the ways that you'll see is a breadth first search. It's hard to say, but what it's trying to do is essentially get as much breadth, so to see kind of the extent of what it has is for frontiers without necessarily digging deep into any of those frontiers right to start. It can be kind of frustrating for the viewer, because what that means is it goes back and forth a lot to try to see what are all the options before it goes on and then figures out which one it's going to go deep into. Depth first then is another kind of way to look at it, where you find one, you go deep, and then come back out.
You know, maybe we have a viewer that is seeing robotics at this level for the first time. So can you explain a little bit about, you talked about frontiers, define that and explain what exactly they are.
Absolutely, great point, Cam. So frontiers is one of the main ways, not all teams are using it, but it's essentially where you come to a decision point or a doorway. And so they call that a frontier. And the reason it's a frontier is that beyond that doorway or beyond that decision point, there are unexplored things. So if you have explored one path and you come to a decision point, it no longer is a frontier, right? Because you know what's to come after that.
So a little bit of a different approach in terms of exploration. You're going to see that as we continue through these teams. So speaking of different teams, let's head on over to our next team. This is going to be another look at Team Dynamo, still within that 10-minute window within those first few minutes. Let's see what Dynamo is able to do. It looks like this is a pretty constrained passageway and kind of cluttered up into the urban space.
Yes, this is this we saw in the systems. It was hard for everything to get through, and not a lot of our UAVs did a great job in going through these doorways, but Dynamo actually does a pretty good job. Now, we saw in that first video that it has some trouble there in the cave, but you see it knocking into the doorways a little bit here, but it's able to do a pretty good job of navigating its way through that more constrained passageway. In fact, I have notes to say that some of these are only 1 meter wide, and some of these UAVs are close to that wide just themselves. So I know it's hard to kind of tell scale, but they are pretty big.
And Dynamo, I think one of the cool stories is they came into the DARPA Subterranean Challenge just a subdomain ago. Their first competition was back at Cave Circuit. They finished off with a 3rd place finish. They are led by their man Hilario Tomei, and they're using the X500. This is a system that almost, what was it, 4 of our teams from the virtual using all the same robot roster.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a fast one with good battery life. It's actually one of the more medium range ones. So if this is the 500, it's about 2 feet across, or 0.65 meters, I think, is what it is. And so it's a better one for the constrained passageways.
And that, of course, it has been modeled. We talk about collaboration. That has been modeled after CTU Crass Norlab's UAV. So Dynamo picking up that system as we head on into our next highlight. This is going to be from Team Marble. And I love this. It's almost like we planned this out. Look, it's a different UAV, and I'm assuming this might be a little bit bigger in size.
I think this one is. 0.9 or 0.8 meters across. So it's definitely bigger. But if you look here, what the other one lacked, the X500 lacked, was guards for its propellers. This one has those, and so while if you run into a wall with the propeller that is keeping you up, you are more likely to crash. In this case, this has more resilience. It's more robust to being able to gently bump the walls and kind of feel its way through, because it's not going to interrupt its source of lift, essentially.
Well, and that's a great point. We talk about different elements of each of these systems, and you can see almost a little bit of a shake there. Maybe it caught an edge, but there are different elements, right, that make certain systems maybe better for certain subdomains and different challenges it presents as this UAV continues through. But one of the other challenges that this competition has really focused in on is artifact identification. And you can see right there's a fire extinguisher, and that actually is reported as a backpack. It's also important to note we had 6 artifacts in the preliminary round. You head on in to that final round. That makes it a little bit more challenging. You have to correctly classify and locate within 5 meters to be able to put a point on the board. And that's where you saw that attempts come up, and it actually identified it wrong.
Well, the backpack is red too, so maybe that was a problem. Yeah.
Great point. So some of the sensors on here picking up different colors as well.
It's a pretty common way to, so the way that vision processing work, it takes a lot of compute power. And so people, I'm not going to say cheat, they help their cause, let's say that. Oh no, big crush.
Oh, that's a big crush.
But they help their cause by finding colors and filtering on that. It makes it a lot easier.
Just another way to try and identify what is down there. Again, this is a completely unknown environment for these robots as they head into the course. They have no idea what they're going to be confronted with. They have some ideas in terms of the challenges, but the course, absolutely not. As you take a look at Team Barks, they're starting to head on in. There's those rails they do not have to deal with as a UAV. And another interesting note, as a dynamic obstacle comes and crashes, so that is no longer traversable to go backwards, but these rails change in the height. So maybe a system's able to go across them or traverse them at a certain point in the course, and then all of a sudden it's now 6 inches higher out of the ground.
Right, yeah, no, and that's what we saw in the real world too. They had it so that it was variable, and so you could be on one side or the other, and then all of a sudden that just didn't work out for your system. For UAVs, it's not that big of a deal because we're flying over it. And we see this one coming back and trying to say, hey, can I go back to where I was? And realizing it did collapse that rubble pile, and it does recalculate where it's going to go. Essentially, traversability went down, so exploration had to go up, and so it's going to go explore some more.
Well, you talk about exploration, and if you take a look at the lower right-hand side, you can see the map, and it shows all the active robots on course. Those yellow arrows are the other ones, the orange being the current UAV. And this team looks like they're doing a pretty decent job of maybe expanding into different parts of the course. I mean, what are some of the algorithms or thoughts as they head in to try and get as deep and as wide and away from each other as possible?
Absolutely, and we've talked about this a little bit, but there's 2 major strategies that you use. You can kind of bunch all the solutions under. One is that you have some sort of global communication and you do a optimization, if you will, over that whole map. And so all of the robots are coming together to then be part of that decision, and they separate that way. The other way is to give each robot locally their own controller that's a little different, or tuned a little to be different than their friends, and then they all naturally somewhat separate to be able to accommodate that.
And that was definitely one of the switches we've seen from runs 1 and 2 and then into the prize round in the systems competition. Something important to note. It's kind of fun to watch as that changed and shifted through their runs, but again, we're still in that virtual world. So here's a look at where we stand, this is just within that first 10 to 12 minute range of world number 8. So you can see the artifacts correctly identified and scored. There's their success rate. That is in regards to how many reports they sent in and were correct. And then the map coverage also shows kind of the amount that they have covered as well. And again, they're in that order of our leaderboard just for this World 8 alone. That's the sub-T layer. So let's head on in to our next few points. I know, what have we learned? Because those first 10 minutes, that we saw a lot of different things from those teams.
Absolutely. I think the biggest takeaway from that is that this is a more constrained environment than we've seen so far in a lot of the worlds, and the controllers that we've been using for everything needed to kind of learn that right at the beginning, and so that's what we saw.
Yeah, and that was exactly my point, is kind of through those runs in systems, we could see how they changed their approach throughout. But again, in this virtual competition, they didn't get that opportunity.
Right, exactly.
They got challenged in the preliminary round, which happened prior to our setup here at the final event in the Louisville Mega Cavern. So now we're heading in past that 12-minute mark into world number 8. Here's a look at Robotica. And again, you're already seeing another UAV system from Team Robotica. They're actually using, looks like, a few different ones.
Yeah, so this one, it's going through pretty well on that long hallway. It's being able to be stable as it goes. One of the things that we haven't really seen so far in this world, where we've seen in a lot of the other virtual worlds, is elevation changes. We've seen it in the system, so you guys know it's coming, but it's going to basically the subway station, where hopefully it can use its abilities to go up and explore the different levels that we have once we pop out into the station, the tracks here.
We also, through our coverage, have talked about the time it takes for these systems to explore and identify. You know, are they stopping and looking at what's in front of them, or are they quickly localizing or figuring out exactly where they are and mapping and looking for these as they fly by? I mean, how are some of these systems able to identify things so much quicker than others? And it's not necessarily always an advantage at times. Maybe you miss something.
Yeah, you really do have to tune that, right? And you decide whether you're going to capture 1 or 2 shots as you fly by, which maybe reduces your accuracy, but you can handle that because of other reasons. Or you stop and you really take pictures at different angles to say, okay, I'm going to use a picture from here and then move a meter, picture from here, move a meter, picture from here. That helps your triangulation, which is the math that you do to be able to say where exactly is this object.
Well, I believe that's what just took place too, is you can start to see some of those attempts scale up, but the points not necessarily doing the same. So maybe a little bit quicker in the search, but we'll see if Robotica, oh, there you go, couple scoring as they go there. Quick turnaround, 3 on the board now with 11 total attempts used.
Yep, and it's moving up a little bit in elevation and popping up to kind of the stage above there and seeing what it can do. And I don't think there's any way to get up there unless you're a UAV. So it's one of those, you have to go far back and do that exploration in that robot.
Have to get deep and then be able to get vertical. As we head into Sodium 24 Robotics at the 43-minute mark. That's what's left on their time clock. And you can again see the nearest artifact just about 4.5 meters away from this current system.
So some of our teams have been trying to make their autonomy solution essentially robot agnostic. And what that means is that they want it to be a stack, a set of controllers that you can use regardless of what your robot's capability is. I think that works well for portability. You know what your robots are doing, you kind of have the same thing going on. It has a little bit less advantage when you've got the different capabilities needing to do different types of things. You have to kind of use top controllers for that. But we see here as we rolled past one of our UGVs, there's actually, if you look at the map down at the bottom there's a bunch of them kind of in the same area at the same time. And so this team, Sodium 24, is one of those teams that does use kind of that portability type of controller. And so sometimes this traffic jam that you're seeing now is a result of that.
A little bit of a traffic jam, but this team has participated all the way back from Tunnel Circuit in the virtual competition. They finished third there, then they went to Urban, also competed and had a solid finish at that 6th spot. And then Cave, they finished at 5th as well there, headed up by none other than Malcolm Stagg, another one-man team. I've seen a few of those. It's impressive that one brain can do all of that.
Oh, I agree.
So let's take another look at Sodium 24 Robotics, because I believe we've got another highlight coming from the Sub-T lair. And here is their track system.
Yeah, so we're going to see the track system exploring in the urban section. It's going to roll over a breadcrumb. So you know that somebody has been there before, right? Somebody dropped that. So this one is going to kind of go back and forth and figure out what it needs to do. We actually see this kind of behavior a lot, not necessarily for a good reason. Sometimes it's a good reason, but in some of the ways that, you know, people try to plan out their robot's autonomy, they're like, well, let's just follow a wall, and if you're in a square room without a door, well, then you're there forever, right? We call this a live log condition, and so it's always something that you don't want your robots to get into. Not saying that it isn't here now, but it's one of those things that's, you know, when you're seeing these types of things, you never quite know if it's doing something that you wanted it to do and you knew it was good, or it's doing something you wanted to do and it wasn't good.
You know, and just out of the corner there of your screen, you also saw the poles right there. I feel like a lot of teams potentially had some trouble with those.
Oh, yeah. Particularly the UAVs.
Yeah, they don't like those. The rotors are not a fan of those poles. Let's put it that way. I believe we got one more highlight coming before we hit that 20-minute mark. Yes, we do. Here is Team Dynamo yet again, and you see the 40 on the screen. Looks like they're just launching off from the staging area. You can see where they've already got in terms of their score 5. And again, this is from Sub-T lair as they head on in.
Dynamo's unique in this competition in that they only have UAVs. They had no UGVs whatsoever, so the 5 active robots that you see on the top there are all flying robots, and so having them come back out for this hour-long run and get a new battery, essentially, power back up is an important thing, and delaying its deployment into the cave is also a strategy that they have to use to be able to allow for this exploration as they go. So what you want them to do is to explore in different places, and so you saw it going into cave. I think it got a little messed up by how constrained it got so quickly. It just was very hard for it to fly. But what you don't really want them to do is to join them another UAV in the same hallway, if you will, which is exactly what we're watching right here. And so I call this the hallway death match. And so you kind of see in the bottom here that the yellow and the orange are coming together.
Oh dear.
A very slow speed, which is good, but you know, this is what makes great TV, right, Cam?
The anticipation is killing me.
Exactly.
Oh dear, oh dear. And
there we go.
Wow, they look like 2 love bugs. I was just in Orlando and looks a little something like that.
Yeah, they did it. They managed to park themselves. Emergency landing did work, which is good.
Yes, they are officially parked. One of the challenges for UAVs, well, it's only so far they can go with certain battery life. And again, here's your scorecard. And I think I need to correct myself. These, again, this is the artifact scores just from their best run on world number 8. So make sure you take a look at those. So you don't necessarily see all the points they scored on this world, but that is from their best run. Now it's time to head on in. We're actually going to skip. Are you ready to do a little bit of time travel?
Ready.
All right, we're going to do a little bit of time travel. We're going to skip on ahead and figure out where exactly these teams are at in terms of their maps. So let's take a look at a couple of these maps, and you can start to see this is the start of Sodium 24 Robotics, and we're going quickly, so obviously that 60-minute clock is going through so rapidly, and you can start to see the cloud size on the right side, the coverage, and the deviation. Explain what some of those might be.
Well, so the green dots that you see filling out are when the sensors of the Sodium 24 robots come up with what it looks like inside. The orange dots and the deviation, you can see it in that lower right-hand corner, that 1% there. That is the dots that come back that don't match with our map. They don't match with the simulation. The higher deviation that you have, it is a risk that you have less ability to localize because your map is a little bit off. It's not a one-to-one, so you can't really just say, okay, this is how it's going to be, but that's what that means.
Well, that's a perfect description to head on into our next team. This is Team Flying Fitches as their map shows up. And again, we're starting at that 60-minute mark to show you as we go through, and look at how quickly and the depth they're already getting just within those 6 minutes, and you can see the deviation difference.
Yeah, you can actually see on that straightaway that goes up, if you look at like kind of how the corridor wiggles around there, the corners, it actually matches with something that is probably a 10-degree angle down further, right? And so those are not too bad at the beginning, so you're going to hit those points at the beginning, but as you go deeper into your map, that's really going to be a big detriment to getting that 5-meter accuracy.
And what are some of the things that can lead to that deviation?
So depending on how you're doing your simultaneous localization and mapping, it can be the errors in your sensors. And so what you try to do is correct yourself at different places to make sure that doesn't happen, but you really have to be really smart about your filtering and the sensors you choose to not make it happen.
Well, let's see what Marble can do in terms of their deviation and total map coverage to a certain point. You can start to see quickly getting on in there. The attempts also showing up still on the left side of your screen, as well as their score.
One of the cool things about Marble is if you look at the very top right-hand side, it says cloud size, and that is in numbers of points. And so you see 4K, 2K, it goes up and down. What's interesting about that is their map doesn't just build, it also removes points. And so if it finds that there are points in there that just don't make sense, it takes them out. So that's one of the ways, going back to your previous question, Cam, on how do you make that go away, is you can reduce your deviation by deciding these points aren't the right thing to do.
And it's pretty incredible to see how accurate that map is. My goodness, only 1% just within those first 20 minutes or so for Team Marble. Now let's take a look back. What have we learned to this point? Because we've now seen what the robots are doing just within those first 20 to 30 minutes, and now we've seen kind of the depth at which they've gotten into within 30 minutes. Does that surprise you?
No, it's a hard course, and so it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do. There's a UAV focus, as we remember from our virtual teams. Almost all of them have more UAVs than they do ground vehicles, and it's hard for UAVs to go through those really constrained passageways. So we haven't seen a whole lot of cave, because if the UAV is going, it's going to be really hard for it to get through. We've seen a lot more of urban; those are more UAV friendly, and I hope to see, as we move on, a little bit more point scoring.
All right, well, let's see if more point scoring is on the agenda as we head back into our highlights. CTU Krasnorlab, and oh my goodness, it looks like those are 2 tracked vehicles. Getting a little difficulty on the inclines there.
Yeah, it's hard to see with the map, but man, that one went almost vertical, and I was like, this is gonna flip over. It didn't. So that was very good. We're actually following the UAV in this clip, though, so it's hanging out there. There actually is, in the systems, another way that you can kind of calibrate yourself, but that's not what's happening there, and it decides at this point, okay, the frontiers have been explored, where do I need to go? It passes by a UAV that's already on the ground beneath it, and I think it is trying to decide whether this is something it wants to explore or not.
This team is headed up by Thomas Svoboda, and this is one of our international teams, both team members coming from the Czech Republic as well as Canada. They've got 5 of the X500s on their team roster, along with 2 of Cyro Data 61's tracked systems, which we saw just at the beginning of this clip. That UAV just passed another one down on the ground.
Yep. So the breadth first searching, has you kind of go back and forth for a little bit, deciding where all the frontiers are. So that's why you saw so many robots kind of at the very, very top there. But once that frontier matching algorithm that kind of spreads out your robots triggered, and they decided who was going where, is really going to start digging in.
Got to dig into this course, and again, and I mentioned the pole.
You had it there, Cam.
And there it is. Such a deadly pole right in the middle.
It is.
And somewhere Angela is tuning in and giving a little chuckle there, saying, "You're welcome, folks. You're welcome." All right, let's head on into our next highlight. This is from Coordinated Robotics, that one-man team of Kevin Knadler. This is a team that has done exceptionally well in the virtual competition to this point, winning 2 of the 3 subdomains. They won Tunnel, then they took second at Urban, just behind Team Parks, and then Cave Circuit again with that first place finish at Cave not too long ago. That was just about a year. My goodness. Let's go. Time flies here at the Subterranean Challenge.
Yeah, so we see a little bit of a traffic jam as they're deciding which way they're all going to go. You actually could see a flipped UGV and tunnel there just ahead of us. So something happened there with that one. They're actually going a lot slower than Coro typically goes on all of these. For this one, it's definitely trying to feel its way around, hopefully catching some of the artifacts that we're passing in this section.
You know, one of the interesting conversations we've had throughout the last few days, maybe off camera more so, is we have teams crossing over, right? And maybe their focus is more towards the virtual, or maybe their focus is more towards the systems competition. So this team has done exceptionally well in the virtual world. Why is that?
So as a software mechanical engineer myself, I would much prefer to write software than have to deal with hardware, and that's what I would guess, is that that's the way they like it too. And when you are kind of focused more on software, virtual is the better place to succeed.
That's a great point, as Kevin Knadler was a software designer previously, and then all of a sudden became a roboticist. So you gotta love it. The one-man team of Kevin Knadler, at least on the virtual side. So let's take a look at our scorecard now, and where we stand on those best runs through world number 8 up to this time. So we've got Coordinated Robotics, there you go, 7 points from them, Robotica up as well. That's a really good job by Team Robotica. And then Sodium 24 coming in at 3. So fantastic job up until this point through world number 8. Again, the recreation of our actual course here at the Louisville Mega Cavern. And my goodness, what do we know now? We saw the themes of the constrained passageways. That was very much at the forefront. What do we see now?
So we're starting to see some points getting added up because we are now separating our robots. We're now seeing that they're getting a little bit deeper or spread apart into our course. How deep they'll get, I'm not sure. I think with these fully autonomous algorithms, this course is just really hard. There's the 3 different domains, all of the details. It's going to be interesting to see how many points they rack up.
All right, let's see how many points they can rack up. I believe we've got a couple more things to take a look at as we look in on Coordinated Robotics. We're at that 20-minute mark. That's the time they have left. And this is one of my favorite places on the course. This tunnel, so gnarly.
It is. I was so excited to see some of our systems get through this at various points, but this one's very constrained. It's not tall enough to even walk through to give you a context of what this actually looks like, and then you wouldn't want to pass somebody on this hallway either. But look, it's very good, very steady controller going through there. It's quite impressive.
You know, I actually did walk through this portion in the real world in the systems competition, and I'm 5'11", and I was ready to get down on my hands and knees and crawl through there, if that gives you any context. Just a very, very constrained passageway. As all of a sudden, then again, you see the crossover in between the subdomains, right? All of a sudden, we're back to some caved walls and the rails down on the ground.
And we're back to some speed, which is what everybody knows I like. We actually have it going through in the fog right here. It does slow down, but does a pretty decent job of maintaining its stability and forward motion even through it.
Well, we haven't even necessarily talked about the fog yet. That is one of those dynamic obstacles in this course, and obviously it heads to the reality, right, of what could happen in disaster situations. And this fog, it can cause a lot of challenges for the sensors on board. As this one makes it through.
Makes it through. It does a good job. When we get into kind of a little bit more of the constrained area, we actually passed a place where the elevation went up, and the UAV did not notice that. So that was actually kind of an interesting behavior.
And there's another rope just beneath on that left-hand side, and all of a sudden, again, wow, from one subdomain to the next, another different looking cave. And I think that's another element to point out, right? No cave systems are the same, right?
No
2, so different environments they have to deal with.
And actually being here in the Louisville Mega Cavern, this is not really what their caves look like, but they made it so that we would crash the UAVs just like that.
We just want to get a little bit more challenging.
Exactly.
All right, Coordinated Robotics, that is a downed UAV. That's kind of a theme throughout our competition, but hey, at least they got some exploring done. Just 14 minutes left as we take a look back in on Team Robotica. Let's see what their UAV can do. Some of the sensors on board, that RGB depth camera and some LiDARs, those pointing in different directions, try and pick up as much information as possible.
So it's not really surprising to me anyway that you see the UAVs in the cave section near the end of the run. Really, you've got to get to where exploration is a higher need than traversability. You want to be a bit more conservative with your UAVs in the beginning of the run, and then at the end, you know, hey, this is for all the marbles, so we've got to do it. I call this section the drone graveyard, and if you look right there, there's one down, and then over on the up on the top, kind of in the tunnel there, there's two more. We'll get over there, you'll see them. But this is just, they all got stuck.
It's very challenging, and there's one of those cell phone artifacts just beneath, and then all of a sudden, this is the perfect view right here, right? You see the challenges all coming in, the subway platform, then the fog coming in. There's another UAV. Actually, there's two more, so you've now got 3 on screen. You also saw a backpack up on that second tier. So much exploration having to be made by these systems.
It's clear that the fog is not something that Robotica is handling terribly well with its filters or controllers. There's 2 UAVs stuck in here, and then the one that you see behind that was down that we passed just a little while ago. We don't know what took that one down, but it could be the fog from there too. It just kind of going through it and not being able to get through it there. So we'll see what this UAV does.
Well, now that we've seen Robotica again kind of struggle with that UAV and the fog, here's a look at their map. This is going backwards a little bit in time. Yes, we do time travel here at the DARPA Subterranean Challenge. So that 24 is on the board. You can start to see the deviation, not too much out in front. And the map coverage now at 30%. And I'd love to see it climb as those attempts do as well.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good for as deep as they've got to have the deviation they do. You see the cloud size, how many points they have, and they keep them all. So they are definitely going to stack up a few errors as we get back, but they're not really that bad.
Nothing too awful to have to deal with. Let's take a look at our next map and see how Team Dynamo has done.
This one's hard to see. So if you look, the cloud size is pretty small. They are very sparse on their points, and so they don't, if you look at the bottom, that's kind of where it is. It's that they just don't put the points as close together as the other folks do. So you'll see that the coverage is still 25%, and the deviation is small. It's just a little harder to see with comparison to the other folks.
Yeah, so coverage just a little bit more limited using those UAVs in those first 22 minutes or so. Let's take a look at our next team, CTU Cras Norlab. Again, going backwards just a bit, that 28-minute mark. What stands out to you, Julia?
Yeah, you'll see a lot of that orange kind of piled together right in the middle. They definitely had some pathways that didn't exist that they are saying that did. So somebody got turned around somewhere and added a bunch of stuff to the map that isn't true. That actually really affects it when you're sharing maps between the different robots. That really affects your entire strategy, all of your robots, not just the one that's having the problems with the map, because you might have robots trying to explore places that don't exist, given the fact that these are part of your global map.
So having to figure out exactly what is in front of them, that's what these autonomous systems are trying to map out and identify as they traverse through these courses. Let's take a look now at Team Barks. Wow, that's a lot of green.
Barks is for Bayesian Adaptive Robotics. So this is not terribly surprising. Sensor fusion is what they do well. So this is a really nice looking map. Their deviation is so very small that, I mean, you can see some, but they're still kind of in that 0% on the how many of the orange are in the set of cloud points that we have at the very top there. So they're doing a great job. Not a whole lot of exploration still happening at the end here. I'm sure that they are collecting the different artifacts and making sure they've got some good localizations to send back.
Well, that's a look now through the virtual competition. You're probably sitting there wondering, well, who in the world won? Well, we did that on purpose. You're going to have to join us again, of course, at the award ceremony. But before we get there, I mean, how unique, how cool is it to get to see this final World 8 really merge with the systems competition as well?
So I got to see it before y'all did, and I have to tell you that I was so excited to see that it matched up with what the systems was. That is just beyond for me. And to try to, basically you've got the systems where they're focused on the hardware and the real things and the errors and that sort of thing, to then take the very autonomous solutions and apply that to that world. It's obvious that you're going to see differences just because the levels of where the technology are on each of those things. But I think that's good. That's going to give us a lot of information as we keep going and looking at what this all comes out to be, to say, what's the level of autonomy, what's the level of perception, what's the level of our, our robot solutions. It's really great.
What are some of the advancements just from the virtual side that you've maybe seen throughout the DARPA challenge that kind of excite you moving forward, that maybe give us a glimpse as to what's in the future in the virtual world?
So I think that there was definitely a lot of autonomy that has been developed through other methods and means. Autonomous vehicles are one that are really looking at kind of that lower level, can I stay within the lines, can I detect my obstacles, that sort of thing. And so while I'm sure there were advances in this, but I think the main advances that I'm excited about are those global maps, the message sharing between these limited comm types of situations, and the ability to autonomously decide where my robots are going to go.
And one of the other things that I keep going back to, it's the collaboration and the competition that continues to happen through the Subterranean Challenge. We've seen teams not only utilize other models from other teams, but also using that Sub-T virtual testbed on the regular, going through the simulations to continue to try and progress their systems and maybe share some of those thoughts. Does that surprise you, or how cool is that in the robotics world?
This is how we do, I mean, this is we actually thought, oh, maybe they're not going to know who won, and we're like, oh wait, they're all going to talk to each other, because that's just, we are so excited about what we do as roboticists, and we're still learning so much, and so it's always really cool to see how somebody else solved the problem.
All right, well, solving problems is what has taken place in the virtual world. And again, if you're wondering who has won the virtual competition, you're gonna have to stick around, because that's coming up in our awards later on today. But for now, we're gonna take just a short break before we head into our systems competition prize round. It's those final highlights. We'll be back with more shortly.